Having grown up in a multicultural family and having lived in a number of cities and a couple of countries by the time I'd finished my graduate work, I had begun to see that there are so many differences amongst the places where I worked. But in every place that I worked, women were not given the same status as men. And many of the people who were less than privileged were also marginalized from a conversation in how to make their communities and their countries stronger. And I felt that the UN would be a really good place where I could hopefully contribute, but also learn from them. From the UN, and I've worked with 3 UN agencies to date, I started off with UNDP, and then I went to UNFPA and to UNRWA, and back to UNFPA. And one of the things that I've seen, again, just to go back to the motivation, was the fact that I wanted to do something to make a difference in the life of those who didn't have a voice. And UNFPA, which is my parent agency, is able to look at how women tend to be marginalized as a result of their reproductive health and reproductive rights. And so I can give you a number of examples, but one of the strongest that comes to mind is a 12-year-old girl I met in Syria in Homs, and she had been under siege for 600 days and lost 3 years of schooling. And when the UN was able to facilitate the evacuation of civilians, I was the representative there, but a member of the UN family. And this 12-year-old girl decided in the space of 2 weeks while working with the UN, and I worked with her closely and her family, that that's what she wanted to do when she grew up. She wanted to go back to school. She wanted to make up the 3 years. And she decided that she could also draw really well. So she was going to tell her story through pictures until she could get strong enough to write. And for me, that was not only saving her, but saving a family and saving her future family. And it was something that I felt was very tangible to another person's life. It was when I was really little and we were watching the news, and I saw on the Security Council they were debating some of the Security Council resolutions related to the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. And I was watching carefully with the debate, and I was very interested in how the politics could help could help forward a global solution to a really big crisis, and one that was affecting almost the entire world. And that interested me enormously. I didn't know much about the UN, but it was this idea that there was a body that wanted peace, that had the authority to do it, and that brought together a global community to dialogue around that. At 12, I didn't grasp everything that was associated with that, of course, but over the course of the years, that stayed with me. And UNFPA specifically, I think we've talked a little bit about the fact that I think that women's reproductive health and rights are central to any debate in development. You can't skip half the world. The U.S., apart from being home and the place where I was born and raised, I've also come to value the United States differently through my work with the UN. It is the biggest, strongest, most influential nation, and that carries a lot of clout with it, but it also carries a lot of responsibility. And as an American in the UN system, I feel that a lot of people globally don't have access to any information other than the news and what they see on movies. And oftentimes, that's a very warped perception of the United States. I think that as an American in the UN, that initial love that I had and the spark that I felt when I was 12 could be carried over very well. You can be the face of a different United States to many people who misunderstand what the US represents. And you can also show that the glory of the United States, that it was an immigrant country, that it's been able to engage inclusively. All of the principles of the UN are embodied in what the United States represents. And so although I can't represent the US, of course, I do think that it presents a nice face that's often misconstrued. meeting different people. The job allows me to be exposed to so many different people and speak to them, enter into their lives even for a tiny bit. And it's so diverse. You get to meet people who are in a refugee camp. You get to feel what it's like. And that allows you not only to grow personally, but it also allows you to stay in touch with your own humanity and hopefully articulate some of the principles of the UN a little bit more, with a little bit more depth and validity.